Right, I think it's off and going. Right then, in that case, I'm going to welcome Hannah and say, do you want to start us off, Hannah, and be first?
I'd be happy to start us off. Thank you, Jane.
Brilliant.
So as Jane said, I'm Hannah Phelan from the Children's Occupational Therapy Service. I've just come along today to kind of give you a bit of an overview of our service, how to access our service, and how our service might be able to support your students. So I have got a PowerPoint with me that I'm going to share just to make sure I don't go too off track and start waffling too much, but hopefully everyone will be able to see it. Right, let's just start slideshow once it starts. So yeah, from the Solihull NHS team, not to be confused with the social services OT team. I've clicked share slideshow, but it's not coming up. There we go. Right, fab. Now we're rolling. So what is occupational therapy then? It's always a great place to start because I think it's one of the professions that people probably have the least pre-existing knowledge about, because it's kind of like with speech and language, the clue is kind of in the name. People can kind of guess what speech and language therapy is, and people generally know what physiotherapy is. But when it comes to occupational therapy, the expectations and the knowledge is a little bit clouded. So it's always good to kind of get that understanding sorted straight away. So we concern ourselves with a child's occupations. To us, an occupation is just essentially anything we occupy our time with. It's that easy. Another word, just to make it maybe a bit easier to kind of grasp, is just an activity of daily living. We like to, when I'm explaining it to parents, I like to kind of break it down into 3 areas of occupation. So we've got our self-care occupations. So this is things like our washing, our dressing, feeding ourselves, toileting, sleep, all of those kind of personal hygiene tasks that we must do on a day-to-day basis. Then we have our productivity-based occupations. So this is either school or nursery for children. And that could be washing our hands ready for lunchtime, feeding ourselves. It could be accessing the outdoor play equipment. It could be being able to join in on carpet time, whatever meaningful activity is happening there. And then we also have, which is so often forgotten, our leisure occupations. So that's things like learning to ride a trike, accessing an after-school club, going out and playing with friends, going to the park with family, whatever that may be, whatever kind of is enjoyment and fun in their spare time for the child. And then it's our job as occupational therapy centres to support the child, support the family when something is making those occupations difficult. It doesn't matter what the difficulty is, sorry. It doesn't matter whether a child or not has a diagnosis, whether they're struggling in all areas or it's just one isolated area. As long as they're experiencing difficulties in their occupations, then it's our job to help. So it could be motor difficulties, it could be their sensory preferences, or just those generic areas. It's really important that when we're considering what a difficulty is, we're being realistic in our expectations as well. So for example, if you came to me and said, oh, a child who is, I don't know, 4 or 5 isn't engaging in an occupation as I'd expect them to, but they're developmentally delayed, we need to make sure we're taking in those wider external factors when we're considering how we expect our children to engage, if that makes sense. I'll go on to that in a little moment, but hopefully that gives you the gist of who we are and what we do. Referral criteria then. So to be accepted into the service, the child must be aged 0 to 18 or 19 for specialist schools and registered with a Solihull GP. That's the most important thing here. We do have some crossover, obviously being where we are, we do have some crossover where children maybe attend a Solihull setting, but they've got a Birmingham GP. In those instances, wherever, so for example, if the child has a Birmingham GP but a Solihull school, then we will support with any school-based nursery concerns, and the Birmingham OT team will support with everything home. So we've kind of got a split service agreement going on there. But having said that, if you've got any children that are on that cross border and you're not sure who they fall between, don't worry about trying to figure that out yourself. Always just contact us, and we're happy to help where we can. So again, to be able to refer to us, there must be clear evidence of a difficulty in the performance of occupations that is not age or developmentally appropriate. So as I said, we receive our referrals we screen our referrals on a weekly basis. So one kind of senior OT in the team screens the referrals each week, and we sit down, read each individual referral and make a decision whether or not to accept it. One of the biggest reasons we don't accept our referrals is because they don't have age appropriate or developmentally appropriate goals. And that's kind of what I was referring to in the last slide, in the fact that if, like I said, for example, we've got a child who is 4 years of age, they've got various diagnoses that mean that they're slightly delayed in meeting their milestones. Maybe they started walking, crawling, talking, all of those milestones were reached later than expected. But then we get a referral saying, well, they're not meeting this milestone, like dressing themselves or going to the toilet by themselves. They're delayed in those areas. Well, from our perspective, we would obviously expect them to be, because they've delayed across the board in the other areas. So their kind of development in those tasks is in line with that, if that makes sense. So it's not always just a case of, oh, they're 4 years old, they should be doing this. It's very much a case by case. Are we being fair in what we're asking each child to do, for example? Referring a child to our service, so we operate an open referral system, meaning that education staff, parents and health professionals can refer to our service. We always like to make this known because obviously at schools you have a whole wealth of knowledge about the child, and I'm sure you can complete many parts of our referral form, but there are some parts like our self-care section on our referral form that may be more difficult for you to complete. So we're very happy for you to share referral form with parents and send it kind of like jointly done. It's really important that each section of our referral form is completed. So the main part of our referral form, there's 3 boxes. So there's self-care box, tell us all the information about the child's self-care jobs. Then we've got productivity, so that's our nursery, school. Then we've got leisure. And then we have 2 other boxes that say what other strategies have been trialled and what are caregivers' main goals. And we often have referrals that are kind of sent to us with just one box completed that's like one box completed with almost like a letter to us, rather than actually completing the answers and the questions and stuff like that. But it's really important that every single box is completed for us to be able to accept it. If there's any missing information, then we're likely just to reject it straight away because there's holes in that information that we need to know. And then, and that's the other thing, we also always must ensure that parents have given their consent for the referral to be made. Even if you're the one that completes the referral, please make sure that parents have knowledge of it and have knowledge of who you're actually referring to, because a lot of the time we sometimes get parents say to us, I gave my consent, but I'm not actually sure what I was saying yes to. So it's always good to direct them to our website or many of the leaflets we have to just educate them before they get to us. So referrals for younger years then. So if you are considering making a referral for a younger child, it's important, as I said, to consider what is developmentally appropriate. I've just put an example there, but I've obviously already gone over this bit. The key thing I think is to bear in mind with these cases of when you're kind of thinking, am I being realistic in my expectations? Do they require this specialist support? Just pick up the phone or send us an email, and we'd always rather have that 5-10 minute chat with you to make sure that you're making a worthwhile referral, rather than you spend all of that time trying to complete a referral form just for it to be bounced back or just for it to be rejected, because that's not helpful for anybody. And we know like time is precious. We'd always much rather have those conversations with you. So please do just pick up the phone and have a chat. We do have on our website an array of information of how to make a referral. There's a video there, which is quite an old one, which we could probably do with updating, but there is a video there on a step-by-step guide on how to make a referral and the information that we're looking for too. So please do have a little look there too. See if it click on now. There we go. So in terms of our service offer, it's really important, first of all, to say straight away, we are commissioned to be a consultation and advice service. So what this means is we don't give one-to-one therapy to any child across the Solihull area. We're just simply not commissioned to do so, so we're not allowed to do anything like that. But within the service that we've got, we've tried to make the most of what we can possibly give. So we operate within a universal, targeted and specialist provision. Our universal offer it's basically like for those children that, especially those younger years children that maybe have never had specialist support before, they've never had any health professional or professional outside of the school involved before. Maybe parents kind of have just realised, and actually my child's having a couple of difficulties with this and a couple of difficulties with that. Where do we start? We always say, go straight to our website. Our website, we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years trying to build into something that's actually helpful resource for people. So we have lots of videos on there. We have lots of links to helpful charities. And we also have our advice sheets, which I can kind of share with you at the end if needed. But we're building our advice sheets in a way that it's always the first step for anybody that comes to our service. So please make sure you're familiar with our advice sheets. We have toileting, we have dressing, we have feeding skills, we have hair washing, sleep, rewriting skills. We have loads on there. So the hope is that as soon as you start noticing those little difficulties, go straight to that advice sheet, share it with parents and just give that a go to start with. See how it goes. You may find that that's all parents needed, that's all home needed to get those kind of initial foundation in place to start building on that. Then you might find some of the children, actually, we tried it didn't work, and that's okay. And that's when you can then come to us and refer to us. So our targeted offer is basically our workshops. We have 2 workshops at the moment that are both, so there's a supporting sensory preferences workshop and there is a motor skills workshop. We have a home one and a school one, both of which annoyingly are primary school aged. However, I've been working with Jane to create a early years workshop, so that is in the pipeline. Literally in the next few weeks, hopefully we'll have something up and running and ready to share with our early year settings. And the motor skills one will also follow the same path. It's just a case of, generally as a whole, most of the children we get through our service is our primary school age. So that's why we kind of just obviously go for where the biggest demand is. But those early years workshops are coming. And as I said, that's parent and school based ones. The workshops work in a way where a parent, a carer, or a one-to-one teaching assistant or class teacher attend the workshops with their child in mind. They're kind of given a little bit of information and education around sensory and motor skills. They're then kind of given the support to set their own goals, and then strategies such as problem solving. How can they identify the problem? How can they identify a solution that works to solve that problem? So both workshops are very much a coaching approach rather than a do this and it will fix this approach. Because we just find the evidence suggests anyway that works much more effectively long term, because you're kind of upskilling parents to problem solve for themselves, and once they've solved one goal they can go on to the next goal and the strategies will work the same. So they are obviously group workshops that people attend on Teams, up to 10 parents and up to 10 education staff, 2 separate ones at a time. And then each person that attends a workshop is also able to attend a review appointment as well, where they have a one-to-one session with an OT where they can ask any questions, discuss progress, and get any additional advice if they need to. And then lastly, we have our specialist pathway. So that's for those children perhaps with more kind of complex needs. Maybe they have a few different diagnoses that means that they need a little bit more support, a little bit more assistance than like the workshop route, for example. Or perhaps they've already tried the workshops and they didn't work for them, so they've gone onto our specialist route. And that is where the child and family come onto our pathway, they're assigned an OT, and then an initial assessment is completed. They may do a nursery visit, they may do a clinic assessment, they may do a home visit, they may complete different assessments. And then one-to-one specialist support is given, whether that's a tailored advice programme, whether that's some just generic advice, whatever works best. It's very much one-to-one support. And then that's followed through with a review at the end and a discharge. So nobody's kind of kept open for a long amount of time, if that makes sense. Children with physical needs, that's always a good one to know. On the specialist pathway, we do have children on our physical needs pathway. So this is for those children that require specialist equipment in order for them to access their everyday activities. In schools, for us, this specifically means seating. So a lot of you may already have children in the school that have specialist seating that was prescribed from our team. A lot of these children kind of come through nursery settings, come through schools, and you're already aware of them, if that makes sense. You already know that they're going to need equipment, the equipment's already in place, and the teams are already involved. So most of the time, it's quite an easy, just pick up the case, and the teams will come in as and when they need to. However, if you notice that any children in your school are having any difficulties with their sitting, maybe they're struggling to stay upright, they're frequently falling off the chair, there is an advice sheet on our website that talks about getting seating right and what to do if you're noticing those seating difficulties. We have a whole frequently asked questions area on our website as well, and it may be that you might need to make a referral for us to do a seating assessment, and we can look into that a little bit further, but that's quite a very specialist part of our service, if that makes sense. Sensory preferences, so the one that I feel like is most associated with OT. So the important thing to say straight from the off is that we are occupational therapists, we're not sensory therapists. So what that means is we can't accept referrals that request sensory assessments or sensory observations, or any specific requests for sensory diets or sensory circuits, because as I said, our focus is on those occupations. It's not on the sensory preferences specifically, it's the effect on the occupation. So what that means is if a child has sensory preferences that are impacting those daily occupations, then absolutely it's a referral for us, because it's having a negative impact day to day. And then we come in and look at it as an occupation the same way we would if they were having motor skill difficulties or just general attention difficulties. Our focus is on the task, not the skills or the difficulties that kind of are affecting that task. So like I said, we do have our supporting sensory preferences workshop, but it's really important that when you're making those referrals for sensory needs, that you're telling us about the impact on daily occupations rather than the sensory behaviours. So, for example, instead of telling us that maybe they like to walk on their tiptoes, or maybe they like to splash in the water, or they don't like getting their hands wet, or they like to flap their hands, tell us about how that's impacting day to day. So maybe it means that they become very upset when they come to hand washing because they hate the sensation of water on their hands, or maybe toileting is very difficult as a whole because they don't like the hand dryer, they don't like sitting on the toilet, and they don't like washing their hands. So it's all about that focus on the task rather than their preferences or their dislikes or their behaviours, if that makes sense. But as I said, our website forms a large part of our universal offer. Please do check it out, because there's lots of helpful resources on there. All of our advice sheets are on there, and it's just a great place to start. Even if you're kind of not sure, it will prompt you in the right direction of whether or not you need to make a referral, or at least to a good charity, or our own advice sheets that could help you out in the meantime. And then, as I've said throughout this very quick whirlwind chat, if you're ever in doubt, ever have a child that you think, actually, I'm just not sure, or actually, I don't know what to do about this, then always just give us a call or drop us an email. We're always happy to take that time out and have a chat with you. Give us at least, as I said, the person who screens the new referrals each week is in charge for responding to calls and responding to tasks. So give us at least a week to kind of give you a call back or an email at longest. But we'd much rather you kind of reach out to us if you're ever in doubt and have that chat, rather than kind of be put off making a referral if you received rejected ones in the past. But yeah, as I said, very whistle-stop tour there. Is there any kind of questions or anything anybody wanted to chat about while they've got me? Maybe they've had lots of rejected referrals and they want to talk about why, if they've got any questions about specific cases while I'm here. No?
There's been a couple of questions in the chat that I've answered one of them. It was around funding. So inclusion fund is what you would have to do. Somebody's asked, how would you fund the specialist seating? So if you get a occupational therapy report or a physio report or any sort of medical report saying this child needs this specialist equipment, there is a specialist equipment part of the inclusion fund panel that you can apply to get it funded. I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Hannah, that if it's funded for the home, it comes through health. If it's funded through the setting, it comes through the inclusion fund. So we don't fund it if it's for the home.
No,
so
yeah,
parents,
absolutely. Yeah. So we'll source it for. It technically comes through the council. Even the health don't have any kind of budget for equipment provision. So when we always sort home anyway, but if it's home-based equipment, then we source it through our local council, make applications and stuff like that. But any school-based equipment, we basically just have a chair, suggest the chair, prescribe the chair, and then it's up to school to purchase that, whether that's through the inclusion fund or whether some schools use EHCP funding as well, where
so
got it left.
For early years, it's inclusion fund, but for schools, it's actually the school's responsibility to buy it. So
and it's the school's property as well, actually, Jane. So like if the child grows out the chair or the child leaves, the chair ultimately stays with you. So it's the same as any other piece of equipment in the school. The school own it, and therefore you can sell it on. They hold their value quite well, so you can make your money back, or you can use it for another child, which is always quite helpful. But yeah, it is the school's equipment, definitely.
Yeah, that's often misunderstood as well. So I've seen people send them on to the next setting, and then I've said to them, that actually belonged to you, because especially when they come and ask for the next one, and we make them pay it again. And sometimes some of these chairs that are adaptable can be used again for the next child that comes along. So
definitely.
And it would be the same for the setting, except I think if it's inclusion fund bought, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to us because we paid for it. So we would then expect you to pass it along while it's still useful if it was paid via inclusion fund, only if you got it completely funded by inclusion fund. I believe, I might check that one because I'm not 1,000% certain, but it doesn't belong to you if we've paid for it. So, right, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. And I know that OT referrals is one of the ones people ask me a lot about. Do I do an OT referral? Do I not do? So I'm hoping that's really answered lots of the questions. I found it really helpful, so because I never know as well. I like it, that it's that focusing on occupations that really helps me.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not sensory therapists, we're not motor therapists, we're OTs. So yeah, our website is there, and we're always there for a call if you ever need us as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jane.
I'm gonna pass over to Kate now. You can have conversation around around what you're doing and what's happening with you. Okay, I'll be quiet for a little bit.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to see if I can share my presentation. Just bear with me because it's had a bit of a fit with me already this morning, as these things often do. I don't know, can you see that? Has that come up? Yay, hooray. So speech and language therapists are based in the same office as occupational therapists and physiotherapists. So a lot of what I'm going to say might sound quite familiar compared with what Hannah's just said. And again, this is just going to be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour around the service. So I'm Kate Powell. I'm one of the team leads for the service. My specialism is actually early years, with a bit of AST thrown in for good measure as well. I just thought I'd give you a little bit of an overview about the team. So SLTs, we're allied health professionals, and we're specialists in speech, language and communication needs, and you often see that reduced down to SLCN. So every time you look at a report and it says SLCN, that's what we're dealing with. Our job is to assess how children and young people communicate with family and friends, and to explore ways to make that easier. Really what we aim to do is enable children and young people to communicate effectively to their full potential, and to empower and enable the adults and the people around them so that they feel confident in supporting the children's communication. I've got some handouts, Jane, actually afterwards. So there's lots of QR codes and links through this, so I can send you the handouts afterwards so that you can distribute if you wish afterwards.
Brilliant, that'd be really helpful, thank you.
So there's lots of reasons for a child's difficulty. So these can include general developmental delay, physical and sensory difficulties, learning difficulties, autism. It might be a specific communication disorder. But what you do tend to find is a lot of the children who are known to speech and language therapists are often also known to occupational therapists or specialist teaching services as well, because communication doesn't sit in a very isolated box. It affects many things. So speech and language therapists often pop up all over the place. This is the same as what Hannah's just shared with you, because we are both based at Chelmsley Wood, with the same telephone number. We have a shared admin office, but our email address is obviously specific to speech and language. So you're welcome to email any queries that you might have. We actually run a clinic out of Chelmsley Wood as well. We have clinics around and about. So one of them is actually based at Chelmsley Wood. Our team itself is very tiny. We've got a very small team made up of qualified therapists and trained therapy assistants. We have a core service which we offer to all children in the borough from 0 to 18, but we do have a separately commissioned tiny little bit of service that is specifically in place to support 22 nurseries, but that's according to local authority criteria, and so that can shift depending on need across those nurseries. Regardless, we work with the key people that are involved in the children's lives. So that can be parents, carers, early years practitioners, SENCOs, paediatricians, health visitors, social care workers. We can end up being involved in a lot of sort of MDT, that multidisciplinary team working. And sometimes that will result in things like joint visits as well. But we will always be sharing our reports and any information with the people that are involved with that child at that point in their life. Just to let you know about our tiny team, so we have a whole-time equivalent of just about 11 people. 9.5 of those people are therapists, 1.5 of that, not that you can have half a person, but 1.5 of those people is an assistant. The core service and the commission bit of service come out of that 11.0 whole-time equivalent. So the core service is just over 8.5 people, and the early years bit of the contract is just over 2 people. So actually that's why we are spread quite thin. So it's not an excuse, it's just an explanation, because everyone always asks about speech and language therapists and where we are and what we're doing, and it's just to let you know that we are working as a small team with a small capacity. Just to let you know about the commission service, so this triangle obviously will be familiar because this is what Hannah has just shared about the universal, targeted and specialist support levels of input. That early years commission service, just for that very small number of nurseries, is intended to be for universal and targeted support. So it's to support specific settings, to do specific, to have specific training. They have advice, signposting to help the children's communication skills. And there's a lot of work that goes into liaising with the adults and encouraging communication-friendly environments, which is a very universal strategy that's evidence-based to be very good at helping children develop their communication skills. So that would sit at that universal support bit at the bottom of the pyramid. Then there's also coaching that's done and training to help identify the signs of speech and language and communication needs and to support those children. So that would be more targeted. If a child requires assessment at a specialist level, really that needs to go through the core service in order to be equitable across the borough. But those nurseries have the support in place to know how they can support a child in their setting. They're given some training around doing that. In the core service, this is kind of a basic overview of what our sort of pathway typically looks like. So the assessment comes in after you've made a referral and it's screened. The assessment is done in clinic. And there's two routes. There can either be advice and recommendations, and then that episode of care is closed. So we have to electronically discharge the children on the system. The referral doesn't stay open. But what we're doing is discharging over to the adults that are involved in that child's care, because we're expecting them to put the advice and the recommendations in place to support the children. The other route would be an offer of some coaching sessions. So that could be in clinic. The earlier service, that can happen in the nursery as well. And then there's a review, and then there's another decision about, do they need more coaching sessions? Does a little bit more support need to go in place? Or can they then be discharged back to whoever it is that's responsible for their kind of care and development in education and at home? And after that, they can always be re-referred to the service if needed. So that's our kind of general sort of cycle of input. The coaching is generally one-to-one, and it's face-to-face normally, and it will be with parents as well as with staff as well. In early years, we can do that for language as well. It changes a little bit for school-age children, but in early years, we can do speech and language. So these are our clinics. You're probably aware of them already, but we have two in the north, Chelmsley Wood and Smithswood. Grove Road's very busy. That's in the middle, in central Solihull. And then in the south, we've got Freshfields and Shirley. Shirley's also a very busy clinic. There's lots of children go there for their coaching sessions as well. The sort of thing that we look at on assessment. So the first appointment is always by telephone. So once the child reaches the top of the list, a case history is done over the telephone with parents. So this includes how they feel about communication, early developmental information, milestone information, health information, and what is already in place to support the child. At that point, a decision can be made about what might be needed next. So if there's further assessment that's needed, that normally takes place in one of our clinics, but it can take place in nursery. It can take place at home, but that tends to be for more complex cases where children aren't accessing a nursery or they can't access the clinic. What we find is that it's really useful to have examples of children's communication sort of to hand, ready for that discussion. So if there's anything that, if the parent comes to you and says, oh, I've got this appointment with speech and language therapy, it's a good idea to prompt them and say, oh, that, you know, they said this last week in circle time. Take that as an example to tell the therapist about what the concern is about the communication. And what we always ask for is up-to-date contact details and for email addresses as well, because we want to be able to send information digitally as well. For preschool children, most of the assessment is done informally through play and observation, because we're not going to sit down many children and get them to do a test. It's going to be around just getting the toys out, and we'll have some structured activities that we are looking for certain things within the play, but children hopefully just think they're having a bit of a game, so which is normally the plan, because that's how we get the best out of them. And we try to choose things that are of their own interest, that they're motivated by. If children can focus better, the assessment might be more structured, but generally speaking, little children don't like to do everything that an adult tells them to do, so we have to kind of work within those constraints a little bit, really. After assessment then, so think about the pathway. This is going back to what would happen next. You'll get parents and professionals, nurseries, GPs, would get the written report. So that will tell you what was in the assessment, what were their communication strengths, what could they do really well, and what were their areas of need, so what do they need some more help with. And then there will be goals and recommendations that are tailored to the child, and if appropriate, a future review or coaching sessions to support those recommended goals as well. We also signpost to resources. We would signpost you to our website, much like Hannah was saying with OT. We have resources on our website as well, and to other websites that are around nationally that are really useful. I've put some of those on the end of the presentation. For some children, that marks the end of their input, and then they might be discharged from the service with a report, but they can be referred again at a later date. The coaching session, sorry, this is very tiny writing. We were obviously trying to fit a lot in on this slide. So the coaching is around the specific targets that are being set. So it's to demonstrate how to do the activities that are specifically trying to support those targets, and to enable adults to replicate them at home and in nursery going forward. Because the trick with communication is seeing a speech and language therapist once or seeing a speech and language therapist 6 times for 30 minutes a week is not going to make all the difference that is needed. The difference is made by the adults around the child putting advice and strategies into place around the child, because communication happens all the time. It doesn't just happen for those 30 minutes. So the idea with the coaching is that we're trying to encourage people to consistently put those strategies in place during regular routines and everyday interactions, so that, because language and communication, children have to experience it in order for it to make a difference. If they don't experience it, they're not going to learn the language and how to use the language around those experiences. So the more that can be done within their regular routines, the better. Coaching sessions are usually around 45 to 60 minutes, so they're quite long. So we're trying to capture quite a lot within those sessions themselves. And then the options afterwards are signposting to resources, a consolidation period, so that's where we ask you to go away, have a go, and then there's a review, or they're discharged from the service. So referral in, so this is going to be very similar to Hannah again, because we are community services. So it's a written form, it's on the website. This is what it looks like on the front page. Again, like Hannah was saying, we need the child's details, date of birth. They have to have a Solihull GP. We have an open referral period, open referral system, so anyone can refer the child. But again, like Hannah said, we have to have parent carer consent. And also, crucially, we need to know about interpreters and any additional languages as well. A lot of the time, families who have English as an additional language, EAL, will just say that they speak English. But what we want to know is that actually they have their own mother tongue as well. And do we then need to look at getting an interpreter in to do an extra assessment so that we can figure out actually what the overall language ability is, not just in English, where they might be mapping it onto their mother tongue. And what we're asking more and more for at the moment is for the support that's in place that has been done before a referral is made. So here on this page here, we're asking about what resources have been accessed, what has been tried, what worked, what didn't work, and any screening and tracking information. So things like Welcome or any kind of tracking that you've got. It doesn't have to be Welcome, but what we're after is evidence that, okay, you identified this and you tried some of your universal strategies, but they didn't work. So what would be the next step? So it gives us a better starting point as well. And also, it's important to remember that those universal strategies should be continuing anyway. A referral to speech and language therapy doesn't stop the need being there. What we would encourage is that everybody still continues to support the child's communication development using universal strategies while you're waiting for speech and language therapist specialist input to come into play, because communication is everybody's business, really. We do have eating and drinking support. So the posh name for this is dysphagia. So we have speech and language therapists who specialise in assessing babies and young children with eating, drinking and swallowing difficulties. Again, it's an open referral, and anyone can make that referral. However, it's not an emergency service. So if a child is choking regularly or has a choking episode, that's a case for A&E. That's not a case for let's ring speech and language therapy because this child can't swallow something. And again, what we're after here is providing advice and strategies to support a safe and efficient sort of swallow ability, and a lot of that could be done in collaboration with OT, because when you consider OT, like Hannah was saying, talk about seating and all those kinds of physical attributes around needing to have a safe swallow, that might be where we overlap with them as well. And then this is your signposting. So BBC Tiny Happy People is an amazing website. It's endorsed by speech and language therapists. In fact, they have a speech and language therapist who helps write their advice. It's got loads of things on there and it's constantly being updated. It's really accessible for families, for parents. It has lots of videos in there. It has lots of bite-sized chunks in there. So it's really worth using that as a good port of call to direct parents to. That's our website, the next one. The local offer's got bits on it as well. Speech and Language UK is a really good charity. It used to be called ICANN. And so they've got loads of things on there for professionals and for parents around tracking, around environmental audits, you know, how communication friendly is your environment? What is it that you might need to think about changing if a child is struggling to listen and attend? Is there too much noise going on? Can you shift something? That's got some really good information on. If you are interested in some continuing professional development, the Communication Trust runs the Speech, Language and Communication Framework, where you can do sort of more independent development around SLCN and how to support it. And then obviously SolGrid, you guys should all know about SolGrid anyway. Hopefully you know about SolGrid. But I can send that on a handout to you. I think that was the end. That's the end. Yeah, that's the end.
That was absolutely fabulous. Thank you very much.
That was a whistle-stop tour. Sorry.
I always feel really sorry that we sort of go, can you tell us everything we need to know within about 10, 15? No, we don't. Give you a bit longer than that. But there is a question, and it's always the question.
Are you going to say it's about waiting lists?
It's always the same question.
Always about waiting lists.
What's your waiting times at the moment? And it says around those that are under 3, and then for the community stuff that are over 3, what's your waiting times?
It's the same. So all the children go into the same waiting list, waiting for screening and waiting for a school age as well as early years. So we don't necessarily have 2 separate ones. The general waiting list at the minute is just under 2 years at the moment. We know that, we acknowledge it. It's not something that sits comfortably by any stretch of the imagination. That doesn't mean that we're not doing what we can to meet that need. Like I say, we're a very small team, and that's why we're saying, you know, please let's work together, and can you put the strategies in place in nursery, because at the end of the day we are a specialist service, and it's a waste of a referral as well if you're going to refer and actually what we come back with is, do you know what you need is a visual timetable, or what you need is to be using objects of reference. You don't need me to tell you that, because actually that all that information's already out and about already. So it's about thinking about what your referral is for as well. The other question on there about nurseries still able to make referrals. Yes, absolutely. You can make referrals to SLT. It's an open referral system. What we ask for though is the accompanying sort of information to come with it as well, so that we've got a really good starting point. Remember that we're going to have the conversation with parents, and we know that sometimes parents find it a bit more tricky to understand what it is that nurseries are writing about their children, and it's a bit of a collaborative form as well. So what we ask is what's going on in setting and what's going on at home. So we're asking for both points of view really, and as much detail as you're able to put in is really helpful.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to go on to our next bit because I think it follows on really well from that. So it's around that training around what should be happening beforehand. So I'm hoping that this sort of follows on really nicely from where you are. So I'm going to talk to everybody a little bit now around something new that we're looking at offering, and it's around training. So I know you come to our Area SENCO briefings. There's always the same wonderful people that come. There's always lots of you, and you listen to all the stuff we have going. But what we're looking at now is training you is possibly the easy bit because you all engage and you're really good and you really turn up. But it's making sure that we get some of that training into the rooms, the people that are actually directly working with the children every single day. And that's something that we've been looking at. How do we do that? And we're calling it setting support. And I want to talk to you a little bit around our future plans around that. So I'm going to do a share if I can make it work. We'll see what happens. I always worry when I do share about what's going to come up. I knew it'd be something that I didn't want. So there we go. So if I do this, hopefully you'll be able to see. Can somebody wave at me and show me that, yeah, I've got nods that they can see that. So this is around what we're going to be offering going forward. So our usual model is the Area SENCO model. So the Area SENCO model of support is that we come in and we support you as a setting with advice and training for you as SENCOs, and we do our annual visit, and we have EAST support as well. So if you've got a child that's got a specific difficulty and we might have given you some advice, but we still feel that there's need for extra support in the room, we can give you some ISP support. So that's our inclusion support practitioners. And actually we've got somebody that's going to speak to us in a little bit. Peter's going to speak to us in a little bit around what that looks like when it's child specific ISP support. But what we're looking at now is something that's more around these training resources, around the training packages and what we can offer, hopefully. So our setting support package is going to look a little bit different. This is additional to, not different from. Let's see if this actually works. Look at this. This is all singing, all dancing. Oh, there we go. I'm quite impressed with this. Oh, that's not worked because it's gone to the wrong one first, hasn't it? So I was clever, but it hasn't. So it should really have gone to the other one. So let's see if it's going to now. No, it hasn't worked. I was trying to be too clever. So I'm going to see if I can go back. Well, I'll just talk it through. So basically, there's going to be a training package that we will work with you as Area SENCOs. We'll come out, we'll say to you, there's two training packages at the moment. There's one around communication and language, which is why it follows on from what we've just done. And it is around specific strategies that will help your setting. So they're very much the SEN communication strategies that we would expect to be in place. And they're the things that when we come in, we advise you to do. So we might come in and say, oh, this child needs intensive interaction, or this child needs a communication board, or this child needs objects of reference, all the things that, you know, we regularly recommend. And there's a focus around all of those. So the first thing would come in is we would come in and look at where you are now. So we'd have a meeting with you. Where are you now? What are you good at? What do your staff need training and support with? Then we would look at creating an action plan with you, and we've got all the paperwork and everything for that, where we would do an action plan around how we're going to implement this training with you. So it's quite bespoke to you. We look at what it is your setting needs, who it is we need to target. Then, sorry, I now have to move something so I can actually see my own board. So 2 seconds, it won't let me. Oh, then we've got some training material. So the training material is what we're going to look at in a moment. And that's in the form of recorded packages of training that we would expect you to be able to share in things like your full team meetings. So there's at the moment for each of the two areas, one for communication and one for SMEH or behaviour, there's about 7 or 8 different strategies that we would want you to look at. It would look like that it could be done in small groups. We'd like it really to be done as a whole setting. You'd probably do it in your training after school, your meetings, or you'd put some time aside to do it with people. It's around you delivering it, but us providing all the materials to do that. And it's, I mean, I'm going to sit there, I didn't do this, so I'm allowed to say this. It is excellent quality. I'm going to show you some of it. Then we've got that additional advice and support once it's been implemented. So you're showing your staff, but then it's around that peer reviewing and modelling to each other and us coming in and making sure that it's actually happening. We've got lots of additional resources around when we're delivering this with you. We will be giving you resources around timetables and signposting on and looking at how you support your staff to actually put this in place. At the very beginning, and I can see people probably looking at me because I've forgotten this bit. At the very beginning, we ask you to fill a competency survey in so that all your staff will say, this is how we feel where we're at the moment. And again, at the very end, we fill a survey in so that you can evaluate the impact in your setting and you will get that all back. So you'll get some graphs and things to say, look, I can prove that we've put this in place and here's how effective it's been, which is always helpful, but also it's helpful for us so that we can look at it and change it if it needs moving on. I'm going to click now and it's going to redo what I wanted it to do. No, it's not going to. No, it's still going to that one. When I do it nicely, it went all the way around the circle, but never mind. So what I'm going to do now, bless her, Sarah's in the room, so she's going to have to listen to herself speak, is I'm going to, hopefully, if it works, I'm going to give you a little taster of what some of the training is. We're calling them our Area SENCO shorts. So once you've agreed to do this and you've got a plan of action and we've decided when you're going to do it, these are the sort of training packages that you're going to be sent. It may or may not work. It worked when I wasn't sharing. And you lost.
There's no sound, Jane.
Oh, right. Okay. No sound. Oops. 2 seconds while I try and go back. Or I think what I'll have to do is stop sharing. And what I have to do, and we did this last time, didn't we, is when I do share, I've got to click on something else. Include sound. There it is. That's always helpful when you do the correct bit of...
I can just talk over it and do the mime if you want.
That's one way we could do it. I think I've put, hopefully now, hopefully, we'll go back. Oh, that's weird. Can you see that? Can everybody see that? That's done a different way. No.
I think that's the first slide of your presentation, maybe.
So is that what you can see? Because I can see something very unusual. So right, I'm going to stop sharing again and come out. Apologies, everybody, but I don't know what I've done there. So let's see. Let's try again. Screen. Right, we're back to this. Can you see this now? Let's try one last time with sound. Oops, come on. You know you want to. Is there any sound?
No.
Oh, how terrible. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it because I can hear Sarah talking away. So I'd like to apologise. So what there is, if I go back a little bit, so what happens is on these slides, oops, is there's some information given and you as SENCOs don't need to deliver the training because we've got Sarah here in the corner, if you can see her, who talks you through the slide and gives you all the information and basically delivers the training for you. We have lots of activities, so there'll be things like we'll show you a video Sorry, I'm talking over the fact that I can hear Sarah talking, which is highly entertaining. I know you can't. So that we'd have activities where there'll be things where it will say, we're going to show you a video. Now this is what we'd like you to do during this video. Then there are videos that are really clear videos around exactly how to do the skill. So this is at the moment still all around using choice boards. I'm going to click on this now. It's probably going to play the video, but we'll see. Hopefully it won't. Nope. There we go. There will then be a summary slide on that training. So on that training, there are ones that would always include Sarah talking. They would also always include some activities and some times for you to discuss things as a team, and some videos, practical videos showing you the skill and how to do it. So how do you go about getting this? You speak to us. So when we're in, you ask us about what there is available, whether we feel that it's something that you can engage with. There is no cost to this, and it is an add-on to your normal. So you will still get your SENCO visits, you will still get your SENCO annual visit that you're offered, and there's no cost implication, but there is a time implication for you. So we do ask that you commit to the time to delivering this, because there is a time implication in the sense that you'd need to be able to get your team together. So the couple of settings I've spoke to in the past have said at the moment they're struggling for the time, they really want to do it, but you need to be able to commit to it. I'd say 6-7 team meetings of around 20 minutes. So it's not a huge time implication, but there is a time implication. So there we go, the gift of time. So that's what we do ask you, that when you start this, that you're aware. Then on top of this, when you have that training, we're then looking at making sure that there's continued support for your staff. So if you've done this and you've got, I don't know, your under twos room, he's still really struggling because they're a lot of new staff in that room that haven't quite got the experience, some of the others, you might say to us, look, we've done all of this, but you know, we're really struggling with getting intensive interaction in these very young children that really need it. So we then might be able to say to you, okay, you've had this training, now we can put some of our ISP practitioners, our inclusion support practitioners in. They can come in and they can do some more modelling and support around these strategies. So it's not the end once this is done. This is a starting point, and then we're looking at saying, how do we improve your practice, basically? We're trying to help you have the best practice, and also going back to referrals to speech and language, it gives you the evidence that you're a setting that's well trained, that's putting the strategies in place, that all your staff are being consistent because they've all had the same training, they've all accessed the same training, they've all accessed the same support. One of the settings that I was speaking to was talking about induction, that once you've got these packages, once you've committed to doing this through once, you keep all of these videos. And so if you then choose to use them as part of your induction package for your staff, so as you appoint new staff, they get all the same training. I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry it didn't actually function. That's just typical. I want to just finish by the fact that our setting support up until now has been very child specific. So our support has been very, you know, you get your setting support because you'll say, I don't know, Fred in this room is struggling, can we have some support to help the key worker that's working with that child? We're going to try and focus that some of our support, our setting support, is going to be much more skill specific. So we might say to you as a setting, you might say, well, you know, we're struggling with behaviour management in our setting, or we're struggling with the SMEH, high level SMEH children, or we're struggling with children that are completely pre-communication. Can you help us with an ISP that will come in and focus on training our staff around that, and we're hoping to have a lot more of that happening in the near future. Any questions? You're all going to sit there and go, what? Hopefully we'll be able to show you a lot more of these training packages so you can have a proper look. There's nothing in the chat at the moment about that. So is Peter in the room? Peter, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, so Peter's going to speak to you a little bit next, and this is around ISP support and what we do. So off you go, Peter.
Hi everyone, lovely to see you. I'm Peter. I'm an ISP in the Solihull area, so I'm just going to show you a brief presentation about what we do and talking about the more setting support that ISPs provide in your setting. Hopefully, can everybody see that? Okay, so inclusion support practitioners, you know, in the early years, or in Solihull team, mostly working with preschool age children, more commonly and hopefully affectionately known as ISPs. So I'll just be discussing my role and the role of the handful of others in my team of setting support that we provide, be that in PVIs, home, school, nurseries, or with childminders as necessary. Some of the reasons around ISP support, why you might want ISP support, or you might be suggested that you have ISP support, sort of like Jane said, and what that looks like in your setting. Address any misconceptions, because it might just think, oh, it's just an extra pair of hands or somebody who's just going to get in the way. So hopefully it's not going to be that case, but just as long as it's useful. And then some points around why having an ISP support in your setting would be beneficial to you and your setting. So role of an ISP is suggesting, essentially, really. So suggesting, signposting, and
sorry,
support.
Peter, I'm just going to say your slides aren't moving forward. So
apologies.
Just, I know that I've seen your slides, so I know that you should have moved on by now.
They do exist. They do.
Yeah,
exist.
they do.
Just bear with me.
The joys of technology. I'm glad it isn't just me that we can't do it, because mine went horribly wrong. So there we go.
Can you see all of those?
Yeah.
Yeah. So suggesting strategies and pathways, using the observations in the setting and staff knowledge, because obviously you've got a very knowledgeable staff base in lots and lots of different ways, or just information from home to help child development. So also having discussions around the pathways like sensory circuits, some of the things that Hannah alluded to earlier on and mentioned about what they might mean for certain children. It might be one child, it might be a group of children, and where they might find that beneficial to them. And then if needed, what the 3 sections might look like, be it alerting, organising, calming down, and lots of different learning pathways that you might think, oh, I don't actually know what that is, but whereas your ISP might be able to provide some guidance on that. Based on the stable relationships children already have with the adults in the room, the interactions, making the intensive interactions count as much as possible, wherever possible, and employing your staff's current abilities, because obviously, as I say, your knowledgeable staff, they know some of them have been around for many, many years, and they will know how to do that, how to employ that. But some of the staff who are new may not, so they might need that additional support. Signposting, highlighting services and offering advice that might be useful given the situations, such as the use of visuals in a lot of settings. Some settings have them used throughout, but then some settings might not see the need for using them until a certain child comes through. But obviously, as we all know, we can use those visuals at any point in a child's development up until the age of school and onwards. So use of visuals, MacTime, other communication devices like objects of reference and visual timetables, like Hannah mentioned, and Kate mentioned as well. But also maybe direct possible cases, links to OTs if we get to the point where you're thinking, oh, actually, this child does actually need a referral. So my role would be to say, okay, well, we need to maybe invest in looking at that with that professional. And then also support funding options like T-level funding, with the commitment that steps are being actioned in the setting by the people who are doing the things that we've asked them to do. So around development points like using graduated approach and the positive strategies that have been suggested by ISPs or area SENCOs. Not to mention the wealth of knowledge available on the Solihull website and even created specifically for settings like the ones that Jane just mentioned and showed you. So, you know, it's a lot of it's there for you. And then with support, some strategies can be difficult to translate into an environment, which is where an ISP can offer guidance and sort of just some suggestions really, which might almost help tailor it to your specific setting or that specific child if needed. And if a new child has come from home for the first time, it can support with the smooth transition into the setting with a familiar face. If I've been working with a child for months beforehand, going into a setting might, for that child, it'd be quite daunting, as you can imagine. But then also having a familiar face to say, okay, well, this child can do this child can't do that. And then helping embed those strategies with the familiar face, with the child, with the setting. So it's all very together, if that makes sense. So this support, however, is not necessarily child specific, and it can be across an area of learning and focus. That can be focus and attention, can be communication, perhaps independence. So again, lots of things are available on the website, just if you need to take a little look a little bit more. The purpose of this setting support, so that could be from an area SENCO recommendation. So somebody from Jane's area SENCO team that you work with, they could have identified areas where a child on their caseload needs support in your setting and offer ISP support where necessary. So, and that would be through the Borough of Solihull. So myself or one of my team would come in and support that way. That could be coaching staff in the strategies, so a bit of a challenge role, providing ideas and how to support specific children's needs or areas in your setting, and then coach where appropriate. Realising potential, progress even, recommend and adapt strategies that you may already have in place or ones that we've discussed together that need to be in place, maybe perhaps with your area SENCO, and with the progress that children are making. Some may already be in place, of course, most likely, but also there may be others that you haven't quite considered, be it a new child, you might not have come across this in the past or before. So obviously an extra mind doesn't hurt. And then developing staff skill, working with alongside your staff to strengthen their understanding and confidence, and that can assist children with SEN. And be quite skill specific, as Jane mentioned as well. If supporting the setting, so you can see routines of play, opportunities, communication, learning abilities. So historically, it's support, as Jane mentioned, that has mainly been in the home with some support going into their chosen setting of the family for that child. Now it is possible to bring this deep level of knowledge to settings and work alongside the practitioners inside the setting to make positive impacts on the learning of children where needed, not just the one child. It could be over a group of children who you notice, oh, actually, a few of those children do that, but that would be based on the relationship that I would have with your setting. So hopefully that we would have built that to make it more meaningful. These sections are where ISP support can be of most value in developing the children in your setting. So routines of play, building independence and social skills, using repeated phrases in aid of understanding. So just building on top of those really. And then opportunities for communication, trying friendly sabotage to prompt language. It's sometimes called engineering, like offering food in a smaller part rather than just giving them the bowl of snacks, or giving them a chance to ask for more, be that using a symbol or a gesture, eye contact, just something else that so communication could be made possible, or just using very simple language, one word sentences, very, very simple. Learning abilities, the use of these strategies and others promote children's ability to learning, and sometimes it can be just tweaking it a little bit, just so how they're done, not necessarily changing the whole thing or saying, oh, that's wrong, you've got to do it this way. It's just working together to find that sort of sweet spot where it works for that child. So what that looks like in observing, so staff to observe and learn. So that would be working alongside staff members, be that one at a time, them just being able to watch how I do it perhaps, and seeing and being able to learn how I do these strategies one-on-one with a child, and then maybe they can relate that to another child. I found myself that there's been many occasions where I've gone in to help a child specifically, and then the staff member said, oh, would that work in this instance? So it's got the mind going on that, so to keep them thinking about it, which is great, because that means everybody gets upskilled, which I'll go into a bit more later on. Key workers to work alongside. So it's about providing the key worker so they can work alongside me if that's how your setting operates. So the key worker ideally would be working with me, and I'd be working with them to try and aid them in their practice where it matters most. So they would actually have time to come and sit with me and talk with me about how to work with this specific child or on this specific need. And then CPD, where staff have shown how these strategies can be completely invaluable, if I'm honest, but I might be a bit biased, to them and other children of other ages. As I say, very, very, very translatable skills. Also coaching over my visits, and like as an ISP, I can circle back to any practice that has been highlighted. So that might be again from the area SENCO, or things that we've identified when we've been doing our one-to-one sessions, be it with the key worker or just a number of staff while they've been watching, and then peer review, and then create an environment of reflection almost for your staff. Did it work? What else can we do? So obviously they get to realise this is their responsibility as well. So, and obviously you get more buy-in when that's the case, when everybody does it together. Collaboration, working with ISPs means that your setting can think and then reflect when they're delivering in these situations. So trying to offer insight, how this works for you, and when it's sometimes it might be the case of a little bit of wood for the trees situation. You might not be able to see it, or as many people, any reflective practitioner, you don't know what you don't know. So it's being honest about where you actually are and being able to find, because obviously sometimes there are things that we might need to come back and I say, okay, I will find out that about you for you, and then come back and we'd work on that together. And then also it would look like it would give the opportunity. More eyes can open up opportunities into removing any barriers to learning that might be for that child from learning, such as communication and maybe sensory sensitivity. So there's a lot of intricacies that could be worked on, but obviously that's what we'd be there to support. The benefits, obviously the main thing, saving time. It's got to be one of the biggest ones, because obviously as Jane mentioned again, the gift of time, it's not something that we have very often. So the more proficient and impactful the modelling from myself and your staff to the children, the greater chance of them doing it by themselves. So you model it yourself to their independence, and independence is one of the great aims, isn't it? Focused practice. My ISP intervention can provide bespoke support to a child or children and settings where it's needed the most. And then quality first teaching, quality first. The aim of all education is to offer best quality learning as you can, encompassing quality first teaching, and be that the specialist targeted or universal approach that Hannah and Kate mentioned earlier on as well. That's a massive benefit. The upskilled staff, who doesn't want to work with staff that know what they're doing? Everyone benefits when knowledge is improved and shared, and increasing the capability of your staff. And then consistency in the room, with staff trained purposefully and effectively, essentially. Not only does it have a positive effect on the children because they're being taught and supported in the right way in your care, but also your staff are emboldened in their role to deliver a consistent and reflective provision, which has got to be the aim of most brilliant nurseries and settings. So I hope you can see the benefits of this support. I hope I haven't undersold it or oversold it in any way. But it's the setting support as a resource. I hope the benefits are clear, as it only adds to your environment and learning experience, not necessarily just an extra pair of hands when you really need it, but as actual, it means something in addition to the time that you've got, in a range of ways for the children, for the staff, and the setting as a whole. But the ISP support obviously is available over half-term period, and as capacity allows with ISPs, because obviously we do have caseloads of our own with children at home. Some children, be it in areas or settings, may not need a high level of ISP intervention. And if your setting is acting on all the advice and guidance offered from all like area SENCOs and myself, then these visits may be even less than that, just dependent on the need and not necessarily the set number. So I hope that makes sense. I think I've laid it out as clear as I possibly can. Does anybody have any questions?
That's brilliant. If anyone's is there a criteria to meet to get an ISP? Is one of the questions in the chat. And the other one is how do we get an ISP to come in? So the criteria really is you need to talk to your area SENCO. And we've done this setting support for quite some time now, but there's been a perception amongst some settings where it's an extra pair of hands when it's a child that's got very high need. And what we're trying to make the focus now is people understand that this is for training for your staff. So it's not an extra pair of hands, and this person should only be in for like a short period of time. They're not in for an entire morning to help you. They're in for a short period of time. You need to be able to release your staff so that your staff can work with them, rather than when they come in, it's not a case of, oh, thank goodness somebody can take over for a bit because we're all struggling. And I get that, but that's not what the ISP's for. So the ISP is very much there to train and upskill and support your staff. So you need to be able to release your staff to do that. So again, it's another commitment that we're asking for. We've been doing it for quite some time, and we have at the moment, I think we've got 5 ISPs, and they tend to have 1, possibly 2 every half term opportunities, availability to do some setting support. So as you can see, it's not a huge amount. So what will happen is if you go to your area SENCO and you say, help, I really need some support here. And you might say, I need some support because I don't feel that what you've come in and you've said, this should be in place, but I'm not sure it's happening in the room, or I'm not sure that we're doing it right, or we're trying our hardest to do it. We think we're doing it right, but it doesn't seem to be making any difference to this child. And you've said this is what they need to do, but actually we're seeing no impact from this. For lots of different reasons, you might ask for that support. Talk to your area SENCO, and then they put a request into me. So they come to me and go, can I have some setting support, please, for this child? And I tend to put them on a waiting list. So if I'm really honest with you, there is a little bit of a waiting list for this. And then as and when capacity comes up, then I allocate it out to an ISP, and they will contact you and come out. There is, I mean, we say at the most it's half a term. It's absolute outside would be a weekly visit, but it's very rarely a weekly visit, because very often what they come in, they model something, and they give you a week or 2 to get on with it and try it, and then they'll come back and say to you, how did that work? Did that help? Oh no, so maybe try this, try that. So it's often about 4 or 5 visits, but it's very flexible on your need. They may come out and say, actually, I think you're great. and let's just move you on in this little area so you get even less. So it's very much bespoke around upskilling. As you can hear, the purpose of this training is very much around upskilling you as settings, but helping you train your settings. We are really well aware that as SENCOs, you've had quite a lot of support from us, and as such are brilliant. And we are also talking to the converted, because we are talking to all the people that have come, that come regularly to our area SENCO briefings and learn lots from us. But we're just really aware that we want to help you make sure that, you know, there is a recruitment crisis. You are struggling to get and retain staff. I'm hearing that everywhere I go. I'm hearing that it's hard to get the right people. So if we're not able to get the right people that are coming in with experience, then it's up to us to make sure that the people we get are appropriately trained and supported to deliver what we need them to do in settings. So 2 routes in, there's an area SENCO support and area SENCO shorts training, and there's the ISP. I'm really aware that we've talked a lot today again. So I'm going to do one last any questions. Then I'm going to say, if you need to go, that is probably the end for today. Don't think there's any more questions. Right, in that case, thank you so much again for your time, you wonderful people. As usual, you know where we are. Talk to us, ask us. I'm looking forward to a list of waiting list now for setting support. I love the one, when does it start? Your area SENCO shorts are ready to go. So talk to your SENCOs about it. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you. Stop recording as well. That's your reminder.
Oh, thank you. Well done. You have to remind me of that. I forget that every single time. Oh, I never know how to stop it either. How do I do it? There we go. Oops.